You're listening to Heaving Bosoms, the podcast where two pals recap romance novels. The podcast where two pals recap romance novels while sifting, whisking, and probably preheating the oven to around 350. All right, HBs, mark your calendars because we're hanging out with Alexandria Bellafleur on April 26th at 8 p.m. Eastern. HB Susanna just pointed out to me that the gorgeous cover on the Fiancé farce is actually a painting. Both of us were sure it was a photo until we had the arc in our hands. Like, wow, it is amazing and gorgeous and sapphic and yum. Anyone at the $10 tier and up on our Patreon can come to the live hangout with Alexandria. And if you're on the fence about joining our Patreon, all 5 episodes of our recap of A Court of Mist and Fury are up and waiting for your ear holes. I went on a journey with Nesta, and the ladies from the Flights of Fantasy podcast were the perfect guides. It was so much fun, and God, their insights were incredible. This week, though, HB Meredith is back, and she's here to recap Rosaline Palmer Takes the Cake by Alexis Hall. So, get ready for chickens, muppet texting, and GBBO references. Here we go. Oh my God. Hi, Meredith.
Hello. How are you?
Wonderful. Thank you for dealing with my shit show.
Yeah, no problem. It's nice dealing with somebody else's shit show.
Some things don't change around here.
No, never.
Oh my God. How have you been recently?
I've been so good.
Yeah.
The weather has been nice where I am.
Yeah.
And so I've been outside a lot, and I've been letting my chickens outside, like
Yee.
out of their run. But the problem with that is that my chickens think that they're humans. And so every time I let them out, the first thing they do is like try and come in the house.
Ah.
So I was like in my kitchen the other day, and I had the door open, and I looked down,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden there's like 3 chickens in my kitchen, and they're just like, hello, how's it going?
Have you come to the table?
We would like to discuss your car's extended warranty with you. It's like,
are you
away.
interested in solar power?
Exactly. Yeah, they were definitely here to sell me something. So then I had to like tempt them back out of the house and like
Incredible.
go throw mealworms like elsewhere. Yeah. But I love it because it means the weather's nice and I'm outside. So
Yeah. I've been trying to trick Michael into letting us have chickens recently.
Yeah.
It's not going well. It might be a multi-year endeavor. You know what I mean?
I mean, I
But
love
I'm in it
having
for-
chickens,
Yeah.
but like, yeah.
No, I'm in it for the long haul though. Because I had chickens when I was a kid. And it's so fun. And like going out and getting the eggs and not
They're
paying
great.
$7 for a dozen eggs
Right?
is really nice.
Yeah.
You know.
And like they eat all your kitchen scraps, so you don't have to like feel bad because you're throwing stuff away.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
I know.
yeah, they're great. And they're very funny. If they feel like they haven't been getting enough treats lately and I go outside, they just like all start screaming at me like, hello, we would like some treats. And I'm like, they're the most spoiled chickens in the world.
I love that. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, and you've had like old chickens and new chickens, right?
I have.
Is it just like a new batch or?
Yeah. So my old chickens came with our house, weirdly
Rock
enough.
on.
Yeah. And then like in the course of a week, one of them died and one of them straight up disappeared. And you can't have just one chicken because chickens are like,
they're very social
and they'll get depressed if you have just one chicken. So it's like, well, shucks, now I have to get more chickens. So then I got it a friend, but then it kept bullying the friend. So then I gave the 3rd old chicken away and got new chickens.
Okay.
So now I have like a whole new batch of chickens, and some of them are normal sized chickens and some of them are bantams, which are the little chickens.
Yeah. The teensy
so they make
ones.
like teeny eggs and they're super cute.
Oh,
yeah, they're adorable.
Yeah. We used to have Araucanas when I was a kid.
That's what my white chicken is.
Nice. Yeah. And I love them. I mean, I think my kids would like go bananas because of the blue eggs,
great.
you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like that's just fun.
It is fun. Although I did have to buy eggs to dye Easter eggs with the kids this year. So we had white eggs. I don't have any white eggs.
Totally.
It's a problem.
Yeah, no, when I was growing up, all of my eggs were brown and blue. That was it. So, yeah, no, you're right. In order to dye, you do need those white ones.
It's just not the same. Yeah.
Yikes. Oh my gosh. Well. You know what? This sounds like something Rosaline would do with her daughter. Amelie, not Emily.
No, it's Amelie, which I love.
Yeah.
I also sound a little bit like Alan, though, talking about my own eggs and like my homegrown honey. And like, I feel sort of bad about that. So we'll have to like discuss this book and then we can decide who I sound more like.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I mean, you're much less pretentious about it. So
it is true.
I think we're fine. I think you're in the clear. I don't think I would hang out with an Alan or invite an Alan to come to the show.
No.
No, the moment, I can't say it yet. Okay, let's talk about the book because this was one of the most interesting romance novels I have ever read from like a reader expectation standpoint.
Yes, and I absolutely agree with that.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but I do want to know your opinion on how we should handle it. I should have asked you this before. Like in the recap, do you think we should tell them why now? Or do you think we should just present it as the book presents it? And then, maybe reveal something when we get to the point that I started Muppet texting you?
I think we should reveal things when you started Muppet texting me, just because the texts were really fun and I was going to make fun of you for it. So.
Oh God, there was so much rage on this end of the world. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
big
could
mad.
feel it. I was like, oh, somewhere in the world, Melody's mad.
Yeah. Poor Meredith's just trying to celebrate her girlfriend's birthday. And I'm over here just Muppet texting. I'm peeing, being true. Like, this better. So mad.
That is what happened. Yeah. So we should say what book we're talking about. Yeah. Which is Rosaline Palmer Takes the Cake by Alexis Hall. I was prepared.
Oh, you are prepared. She's got the physical book and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So Rosaline is a 27, maybe 28-year-old British lady. She's a single mom. She works at a shop that sells stationery. And she has maybe the worst parents on the planet.
The worst parents. They're terrible.
Yeah. She gets some really good advice later from a very wise character, and she almost takes it, and I feel like she's on the road by the end.
I feel that way too. Yeah. Like, I feel like if there was a sequel about Rosaline, like, she would be in a better place with her parents.
Oh, most definitely. There is a moment where she says something like, the worst thing a person could do is like wield their child as a weapon in a fight with their parents or whatever.
Yeah.
And I gotta tell you, I mean, the way that she was describing it, that's correct, because it was like, I'm not gonna badmouth her grandparents in front of her.
Right.
But I firmly disagree. I think that, boundaries with grandkids are a perfectly fine weapon to wield when you're dealing with a shitty grandparent. Like,
for sure. Absolutely.
You can either shape up or you don't get to see them anymore.
Right.
It's very simple.
It's not complicated. You don't treat my kids right, you don't get to see them, period.
Absolutely.
You don't treat me right in front of my kids, you don't get to see us, period. Like,
absolutely. Yeah. And I was like, am I a monster? I don't know. Maybe.
I don't think so. I think probably if I had read this book 10 years ago, which obviously I didn't because it wasn't out then, I probably would have agreed with her. But the cool thing about being in your 30s is you learn how to set boundaries.
Oh, it's beautiful.
It really is.
Yeah. And you learn that like the boundaries will hurt and they will hurt you even. But like in the long run.
Still better to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Okay, sorry.
No,
so
she's it's fine.
A single mom. She works in a shop. She's also very famously bisexual. And I love that. She
is. I love it. The book starts with her talking to her ex-girlfriend Lauren / best friend,
married now to another lady.
Yes. And Lauren is like pretending. Okay, so the premise of this book is that Rosaline goes on a baking show like the Great British Bake Off. It's very clearly supposed to be the Great British Bake Off. It's called Bake Expectations. So she's like practicing her first bake, and her friend Lauren is like, now most of the bakers have done blah blah blah, but this MILF over here, and she's like, Lauren, the BBC's not gonna call me a MILF. And it was just like a delightful little dynamic.
Yeah, it's so cute. It's so cute. I love them. I love the way that their relationship has transformed over the years. It's so, so nice. But anyway, they have to go pick up Amelie, her kid, not Emily. I did listen to this book for the most part, and then like I read it later. And so there are a few things, like I thought her name was Rosalind, not Rosaline. Yeah. And then I had to do a Google, and I, like Harry, became very educated because apparently Shakespeare did 2 Rosalins. One is with an E in Romeo and Juliet, and one is with a D in As You Like It. And like, that's just the way the cookie crumbles, I guess. Anyway.
I mean, apparently they only had so many names in Shakespeare times.
Put a D on it. It's different now. There you go. It's fine.
Yeah. So they go pick up Amelie from school, and Rosaline has to catch a train because she has to get to fancy ass house where the show's being filmed. So she's like, gotta get the girl, gotta go to school. And then when she gets there, the teacher's like, we gotta talk. She's like,
that is one of the, Valor's preschool teacher the other day was like, oh, I'll talk to you in there. And I was like, like all of my sphincters clenched. I was immediately like, and I'm friends with this woman, but I was immediately like, I'm going to the principal's office.
No, and that's what Rosaline says too. She was like, I'm trying to sound maternally concerned, not scared and in trouble. Like,
yeah. Oh my God.
So the teacher's like, we have to talk about the language that your daughter's been using in school. And turns out the daughter was talking about how her mom is bisexual because they were talking about the bi prefix, meaning 2 things. Bicycles have 2 wheels, etc. And the teacher pulls the like, well, we don't teach about LGBT issues until year 6. And Rosalind's like, this is her family. And if you're preventing her from talking about her family, it's discrimination. So, and it was beautiful. I loved how Rosaline handled it. As a queer person, beautiful. I was just like, yes, get it.
Yeah. I mean, and it was so, she handled it so nicely, but yet very firmly being like, this is biphobic and it's discriminatory. If you let other kids talk about their parents, she gets to talk about me because I exist the way I exist in the world.
Right. Yeah.
It was great.
And I feel like that's sort of a trend that Rosaline has throughout the book. Like, because when she's talking to Harry later with the tea and she's like, no, this isn't okay. Like, she's never rude, but she's like very okay with letting people know, like, that wasn't okay. And I really liked that about her.
Yeah. And I liked the contrast between the way that she deals with literally everyone in the world and then the way she deals with her parents.
Yeah.
Because it is, shame. It's like the contrast is striking.
Yeah.
Anyway, so now she's fucking late to the train, and then she misses the right train, has to get on like a different train that does a local stop probably. And it's a whole thing. And then the train breaks down, and then she gets off at, small town station, and there is a dapper man who is also there.
A very dapper man. And apparently he's another contestant, and his name is Alan, but it's spelled with an I, which I dislike strongly.
Yeah, I didn't know that for the
no
first
offense to any Allens out there named Alan with an I, but I dislike that spelling. No, and so they start a banter, and it's lovely.
They do. It's a sexy banter. Okay,
it is. They're talking about like British town names that are like innuendo-y, and it's very cute.
Yeah. And he says, like, what's your name? And she's like, Rosaline, Palmer? And then he starts doing that cute thing sometimes that people do. And he only refers to her as Rosaline, Palmer for roughly the rest of the book. But
pretty much,
for most of it was very cute.
Yes. They end up spending the night at a random farmer's house.
Very nice farmer.
Very nice farmer who's like, spend the night here and I'll take you the rest of the way in the morning.
On a hayride.
They're like in a trailer full of hay, and she's like, this is much less comfortable than it seems in all those England Times movies. She doesn't say England Times, but she does, listener. She does. Okay.
Yeah.
So they get to the place. Oh, we should talk about Malawi, even though I hate it and don't want it to exist.
Yeah. So she's like, wow, you're a landscape architect and you're so accomplished and you're so dapper and you're so this and you're so that. And like, you're exactly the kind of person that my parents would love me to be with. And like, I don't really get any time to date. So it would actually be kind of cool if I did this baking show and then also ended up with a boyfriend. Like, listen, who knows? But because of that, she panics and he asks what she does. And instead of saying, I'm a single mom who works in a shop, she says, I'm a medical student. And I just got back from like years of like basically doing Peace Corps in Malawi. And she's like, oh, shit, fuck, Rosaline, like, what are you doing?
Her internal monologue at that point was so great.
So
she's like,
good.
as the words are coming out of her mouth, she's like, what are you doing? Stop it.
What are you doing? And she's like, do I have to now commit to this for the entire show? Because it's very easy to disprove. Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. So he's like asking her all these questions and she does not want to answer them. So then they finally get to the baking show and they meet Colin Thrimp, who is the production assistant. He's just an anxiety ball, and you understand why when you meet his boss. But although, hello, Alexis Hall. Hello. My name is Melody, and I would love a book, maybe even like I would take a novella about Jennifer Hallet.
Oh, in a heartbeat.
I need it, honestly.
I will say this, and I talked about this in the call a couple of months ago, so I don't think it's a spoiler, but there's a second book in this rough series that also takes place at the same baking show. Paris Silent Court is about to crumble. I had to DNF that book because Paris has so much anxiety that was so similar to my internal monologue. And I was like, oh, I can't do this. But I was so sad because I just wanted to spend more time in that world, like with Jennifer and Colin, with Marianne and Wilfred. Like, I just want more of like the behind the scenes baking show.
Totally.
It's the best. Like Jennifer.
It's so fun. I mean, honestly, chef's kiss. Like, I think at one point she says, I don't trust you the length of a weasel's cum shot or something.
Oh my gosh. Like, she's just like, honestly, this is how, can I read just a little bit? This is how we meet. This is how we meet her. She's like, they're having an introduction. All the contestants are there. And she goes, and finally, remember that this is a family show. So get all the fucks, shits, and bastards out of your system before we turn the cameras on, because you will lose me footage. And if there's one thing I fucking shitting, bastarding hate, it's when people lose me footage. 14 hours, it seems like a long time, but let's be real, shitbags. This is a dozen people making cakes in a fancy house, and 95% of what happens is boring as arse. So if some complete dog scrotum ruins our only good shot of a wobbly pie or a smashed trifle by dropping a fuck on it, I will personally feed their tits and or bollocks into a Megamix. That's all I can think of right now. But let me remind you that my entire pissing job depends on the great British public finding you lot completely adorable. So shy smiles and vapid anecdotes about your families are gold. And for fuck's sake, keep your opinions about God and the Prime Minister to yourselves. Good luck. Have fun. Nobody speak to me unless they're on fire. And then she walks away. And I was just like, why are we not reading 18 books about this woman?
Honestly, she's
amazing.
I've never, and that is just one of her many monologues that are just absolute perfection.
They're so good.
Oh my God. I'm trying to remember who the audiobook narrator is, because this audiobook narrator is out of this world, and she does so many different accents and voices and all the things, but she does this Scottish brogue with Jennifer Hallet that is just like mouth-wateringly good. It is so good. Anyway, okay, I'll have to look it up later. But yeah, so she's gonna do the show, and I have a question, I guess, for do you GBBO?
I love GBBO. Yes.
Okay. Good. I'm glad that we have a scholar here, because I have only GBBO'd in passing.
Okay.
And I do that because I know it will be a rabbit hole I'll never be able to get out of. That's fair. I start it, you know? So are they in a ballroom? Every time I've done GBBO in passing, they're out in tents. They're tents outside.
Yeah. So they're not in a ballroom. They're usually in a tent outside. But I feel like Alexis Hall was trying very carefully to like make it very obvious, but also be different enough. So like in this book, they're baking in this like big ballroom inside the house.
It's great.
They're not outside, but like they do reference the like sweeping shots of the British countryside when they drive up, and like there's a kind, happy host and like a
and the grandfatherly man. Yeah.
Now in GBBO, it's the other way around. Paul Hollywood is like the one, and Mary Berry is like the lovely grandmother one, and so they're switched. Wilfred Honey is the lovely grandfatherly one, and Marianne
Wolvercott
is the like well, if it was good it would be nice, but it's not good, so
it's not.
But it's just lovely. There's a lovely host of the show called Grace Forsyth, who does like a Mel and Sue thing all by herself with like bad jokes, and it's just delightful.
So funny. Yeah, no, it's great. And so you get to see like a little bit of the filming aspects of it. And the way that this book is structured is fucking brilliant, because instead of like having chapters or whatever, the show is filmed in 8 weeks. And so you get like week 1 pies or cake or whatever, week 2 pies, and we do Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then I think they'll do like Tuesday if power goes out or something, right?
There's like very infrequently like what else is going on during the week, but the book is mostly told over the course of 8 weekends, which is sort of lovely.
It's really fun.
That I think there's recipes in the book as well for some of the things that they cook at the end, and it's very nice.
I'll have to send them to Naomi at the HEA kitchen.
So one of the things that is different from GBBO is that they only make 2 recipes. So they start with what they call in the book the blind bake, which is like technical, and then they do like the showstopper. So there's just 2 recipes every week.
Okay.
Structurally otherwise, it's like very similar to Bake Off.
Okay. Bake Off does more?
3.
Oh, interesting.
So they do 2 on the Saturday generally. So they'll do a signature bake, which is just like, okay, make a cake. And then you like make your favorite cake that you make every Sunday for your family or like whatever. Okay. And then there's the technical, which is when you show up and you don't know what they're making. And then like, make this weird Hungarian yeast cake thing that nobody's ever heard of with 0 instructions. And then the next day they make a showstopper, which is like big and impressive. So.
It's really cool. Just FYI, the narrator for this book is Fiona Hardingham, and she might be one of my favorite narrators ever now. So.
Good to know.
So Alan wins the blind bake because on the way over on the hayride, she did let him look at all of her cookbooks because she doesn't understand competition, our beautiful soul.
She doesn't. She very strategically brought with her, she's like, well, in the last couple of seasons, the first blind bake has been from one of their cookbooks. So I brought with me some of their cookbooks that are on cake, which is what we're talking about. And then, of course, it's one of the cakes that they were looking at. And
it's ridiculous.
So Alan wins.
He wins and it's bullshit. And then the next day, they have to do a different kind of cake, everyone. There's going to be a lot of me saying general baking terms. And by general, I mean like grocery store terms. So they're going to do a cake now, showstopper one, probs. And at lunch, she goes over because she's been like, sort of flirting with Alan every once in a while. And we meet a bunch of the other cast, but we don't really have time for that. And Vita is the best. So read the book. But she goes over to get some tea with lunch, and there's this like hulking man who's standing there who and Vita has decided is one of the 2 hunk muffins, maybe, or stud buckets. What does she say?
Stone cold hotties, I think.
Stone cold hottie. That's the one. Thank you. And so she's like, okay, well, I'm into this dapper man over here. But then he's like, oh, do you want a cuppa, love? And she's like, oh, he's one of those. Oh, I can't believe this. Like, he's a tradesman. And he calls ladies love and bird and all the business. And he uses the word ain't. And like, a lady like me is not interested in a guy who we find out is like Harry. She is such an elitist asshole.
She is. There's that one little part where she's like, I know Lauren, her friend who's a writer, would be like, English isn't English is evolving and doesn't actually have rules.
And dialects are cultural.
Right. But I think that there's rules and you should blah, blah, blah. And I was like, girl, no.
Oh, get out of here, you classist pig. No, it's fine. It's fine. She's going to get better. So she's like, I would like a cup of tea. Also, please don't call me love. And so Harry's like, oh, okay. What should I call you then? Because like, if you were a bloke, I would call you mate. And she's like,
you could call me my name.
And he's like, okay, what's your name then? And she's like, oh, I'm a dumbass. She doesn't say that out loud, but like, hello, Rosaline. And so then she tells him that her name is Rosaline. And then she tries to explain that it's like, she's like, oh, it's from Romeo and Juliet. And he's like, I know I didn't get like great marks in school, but I swear the lady's name in Juliet is Juliet. And so then they start this whole bit where she's like, no, she's the character at the start where Romeo's in love with until he sees Juliet and then he forgets about her. And he's like, okay, so your parents named you after a bird. What's in a play? What's not in a play? And then
she's just like, it's just my name. My name's Rosaline.
It's so good.
Yeah, it was a little great piece of banter. And while this is happening, they're getting tea, and it's like one of those like push down tea dispensary thingies, and the handle gets stuck. So they're just like holding a mug and that slowly fills up and then like putting another mug, like just waiting for it to run out because they don't know what to do with this tea, which was very funny.
It's really cute. Well, and I think importantly, when that's happening, Harry's like, oh no, it's not working. I'm not taking the top off. I'm not doing anything because if I do it, I'll have to like go over to that assistant and be like, look, I broke your thing. And then everybody will think I'm like the dude who breaks things or whatever. And I don't know, you start seeing a little bit of Harry's anxiety brain.
Yeah. And Harry is a tradesman. He is an electrician.
Yes.
And I think there's also some of that, like, I'm here to bake. I don't want to be stereotyped. Like, I'm trying to avoid this. Like, exactly. I know they're going to put me in a pigeonhole, and I'm trying to control a little bit which hole they're going to slot me into for this show. So,
Yeah. And Rosaline shows exactly the hole that everybody's going to slot him into in her inner monologue. And
she does.
So then one of the guys, maybe Dave, he's like a fedora wearer. He has to go home and she's like middle of the pack and it's fine. Yeah. And then when she gets picked up at the car park, her dad picks her up and it's like a couple of hour drive to go get her. And so she's like, yeah, they tell me that it's not a burden and it's like not a problem. And they say those words out loud, but they will remind me of this favor that they've done for me until the end of fucking time. Yeah. So it's just the worst. Anyway, she's sitting there. The other thing that happens later on, I'm so sorry, everyone, is that Alan does find out because she's telling everyone else the truth. Oh, right.
The Malawi thing does resolve itself pretty quickly. So he comes up to her and he's like, so I heard you have a kid. And she's like, uh-huh. Yeah. He's like, did you meet somebody in Malawi? And she's like, none of that was true. And he was like, cool. Well, I don't know who you are. And you lied to me. So I'm going to go think about that. Yeah. Bye. And she's like, oh, but you were cute and I liked you.
Yeah.
And stupid Rosaline.
She sort of tells him like, I got so nervous because I like you. I'm interested, you know.
Yeah.
And that's why. So then they're at the car park and she's sort of, saying a very awkward goodbye to him. And her dad, who's like a cardiologist, comes over and he starts doing that thing that he always does with male suitors only, I guess, where he's like, oh yeah, like what do you do? And, basically interrogates them until they feel terrible about themselves and their accomplishments because they're not enough.
Right.
And
she's like, but Alan seems close to winning.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Alan's holding his own. He's just like, oh yeah, have you been to Dubai recently? That's where my most recent landscape project was.
Yes, Alan is a landscape architect, which neither we nor Rosaline are sure what that means.
I think because she's a landscaper who doesn't get their hands dirty, right? I
think so. She's like, do you say mountains need to go there? And somebody puts a mountain. He's like, no, but I did have a lake moved once. And I was like,
yeah.
Doesn't sound like a real job, but apparently it's impressive enough for St. John Palmer.
Yeah, it's definitely a rich person job, you know?
Yeah.
Otherwise, you just call yourself a gardener or a landscaper or
Right.
whatever. So now week 2, everyone, is pies.
Pies.
And on the Friday, she is like walking around the grounds before anything starts to like clear her head and really, you know, get in her bad bitch mode and like, I'm going to win this thing kind of deal. Because her whole plan is this is an opportunity to like change the whole trajectory of her life.
Right. She's here because she needs to win so she can get that chunk of cash so she can basically get out from underneath of her parents. She's working a minimum wage job. She's like holding her own, but she's in that place where like if her car, well, actually, I don't even know if she has a car. Like if her car breaks down, she'd have to call her parents to like come rescue her. And then her parents are going to hold that over her forever.
Oh, yeah.
And she's like, I want the cash so I can like get out from under this and make a good life for me and Amelie. And that's what I'm here for.
Yeah, and if you do well enough, you get like cooking deals.
You get a cookbook deal or
deals,
whatever, right? Exactly.
Yeah, there's like a bunch of opportunities afterwards, and she's like, I won't have to work at a stationery shop anymore, and that would be great. So, okay, as she's walking around, the thing happens with Darcy and Elizabeth after he proposes to her, where like they run into each other on the walk, okay?
And they stare at each other like.
It's just as awkward. Yeah, she's like, I can't flee because that's not socially acceptable. It's all I want to do. So he's like, shall we go on this walk together? And she's like, okay. And, you know, she's charming. And she's like, oh, have you dined out on the story about the girl who liked you so much she made up, you know, being in Malawi or whatever?
Yeah.
And by the end of it, he forgives her and like gets a bunch of her life story. And over the course of the book, there's several times where we see other people asking her about like her life and her life choices, essentially. Mm-hmm. Because she got pregnant at 19 when she was in Cambridge to be a doctor. And she decided to drop out and have the baby and like not go back because even though she had the parental support, they would have taken care of Amelie or like gotten a nanny or whatever so that she could stay in school. She made the choice to be a much more hands-on parent, honestly, than she had. I think it's not all of it, but it's certainly part of it.
And that's like part of what drove the wedge between, well, I mean, her parents are not great. I'm sure there was friction there before, but her parents like, you had so much potential. You could have been great. And now and she's like, but I am great. Like, I'm a great mom. I'm even though I'm not a successful doctor, like I'm still I'm still valuable. I'm still a human. And they're like, oh, you had all this potential that you've wasted. And it's gross.
Yeah. And she's very successful if you look at it with a measure that's not her parents. It's not defined by her parents.
Right. And her parents are both doctors, right? Her mom's like some famous oncologist.
She's an oncologist, yeah.
And her dad's one of those doctors that like doesn't even do surgery anymore because he's like too successful of a doctor, so like people just call him to consult.
She says at one point, she's like, he doesn't even leave the house unless it's a triple bypass with complications. You're just like, oh my God, go away.
Yeah, he's insufferable. And he also likes to listen to the shipping forecast, which I thought was very funny.
Constantly. It's so funny. Yeah. Well, and so the interesting thing about these conversations, to me at least, is that sort of friction between everybody else being like, it's kind of sucks that the dad got to go be a hydroponic engineer or whatever he is. Yeah. And you had to sacrifice. And she has to keep on being like, Amelie's not a sacrifice. She's a person. She's like my favorite person. She is a choice I made. It was not a sacrifice, you know?
Yeah.
And I don't know. I thought that was handled really beautifully.
Yeah, I agree. One of the things that I love about Alexis Hall in general is like how those sort of tricky, complicated conversations happen. Like Alexis Hall doesn't shy away from them. As we've seen by the very first scene in this book where she's like, hi, Amelie gets to talk about me. I exist.
Right.
And Alexis Hall handles them so well and in such a thoughtful way. And I've almost like put some of those strategies into my own like backpack of like, how do I respond to things? Because like, oh, this is a good way to handle this. And so I really like his books. Seem really like real, like about real people who deal with real stuff, but like handled in a way that you walk away from a conversation and then you're like, oh, I should have said that. And like, they just say it the right way the first time.
Handled it in the goals version. Unless they absolutely don't, but that's like part of the plot.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So the other thing that I sort of loved about that like awkward having a walk conversation is they like patch things up, the silence becomes more comfortable and they start chatting again. And then he's like, so I can't help but notice you mentioned an ex-boyfriend and an ex-girlfriend. Are you into multiple sorts of people? And she goes, she's like, this conversation. She's like not a huge fan of people asking her that because with guys especially, it's usually like fetishistic, like, oh, that's so hot. So she goes, oh yeah, a huge variety. I've dated playwrights, engineers, bass guitarist, a lawyer. And he goes, you know, that's not what I mean.
That's
blondes, brunettes, redheads. He's like, okay, fine. I just wanted to make sure it was okay to put the moves on you, that you weren't a lesbian. And she's like, no, you can put the moves on me. And he's like, cool. Is it okay if I put the moves on you then? And she's like, yeah, that could be cool. And inside her inner monologue's like, be cool, don't be desperate, don't be desperate.
Yeah, she's like, and he does kiss her right there by the river.
He does do a kiss on a bridge. It's very idyllic.
It is. Yeah, it's very storybook. Yeah. And so I will say that from personal experience, one of the reasons that one of the many reasons that I'm with Michael is that I'm a bisexual person, and he from day one was never like, oh, wow, really? Like he was like, okay, man, do you want to be monogamous though? I was like, yeah, I do. That'd be great. And it was really refreshing because like, it's just like, stop it, everyone. It doesn't. I had somebody say, after they found out that I was bisexual, I had somebody try to explain it to somebody else by saying that if I go out to a party, everybody else might come home with like a dude, but Melody will go home with anyone. And I was like, it's not
kind of, but I still have standards.
Super like, not the same. What? Like,
I also am a bisexual person, but I'm also a polyamorous person, but I'm in like a committed relationship just with multiple people. So like that conversation is also even harder because like, yes, I do sleep with multiple people on a regular basis, but like, I'm also, no, I just want to sleep with these people.
Yeah. It's just these ones. I like these ones. I don't, it's not a free for all over here.
Just because like I find all sorts of people attractive doesn't mean that I'm not like, I hate that assumption like, oh, you're bisexual, therefore like,
Oh my God. Today, Ember and Michael went and got some fish for our tank. And Ember said, hey, Mom, I made sure that we got 2 girl fish and 2 boy fish. And I was like, oh, really? Why did you do that? And he's like, because then they can marry each other. And so I didn't even think about it. I was like a plant fell over. And so I was dust binning the floor. And I said, or they could just be in an open poly knot. And he was like, Mom, what's an open poly knot? And I had to be like, oh, fuck, here we go. Let's explain that to a 6-year-old.
Yeah. My girlfriend's kids are 11 and 8. And we've been together for like a while. And so like, this is just very normal for them to like have multiple like parents around,
adults around.
People. Like we all sleep in the same room when we're together. So like, that's just normal for them. And then every now and then one of their friends will say something and be like, wait, but why is that weird though? Because like, and it's kind of cool like raising kids that way, to just be like, other people are, live their different lives, but then also sometimes they'll still say something like, that's incredibly heteronormative of you to like you your mom's dating a girl, right? Like It's very
No.
funny.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Kids are great, dude.
Seriously.
And
they
I will
make me
say,
think so much more.
yeah. And I will say, if you're the kind of person that doesn't like kids in a romance novel, we've talked about Amelie a lot, but she's A, pretty chill, and B, not like a huge, she doesn't show up a lot. So I think you should still read this book.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. She doesn't show up a lot, and when she does, she talks like an adult.
She's very precocious, which is great.
Yeah, it's pretty fun.
All right, so week 2, pie. So they wake up on Saturday and they're baking this. Basically, Rosaline describes it as a lemon meringue cake, but somebody wanted to make themselves seem different, so they added oranges and called it something else, but it's just a lemon meringue cake. But she keeps getting distracted because Alan kissed her. So her monologue is like, okay, make the crust. This is fine. I know how to do. Alan kissed me last night. No, okay, so squeeze the Alan, which is just very funny. That like new relationship, like distraction, and she's like, no, I have to cook. I'm here to cook. But Alan kissed me. I loved it.
Yeah, and his concentration is not broken for a moment.
It's insufferable, actually.
Yeah, it really is. So, okay, so what do they? Does he win the second one too? The
I think so.
Blind bake. Yeah. He's constantly winning stuff, and he's constantly like, "Oh, I foraged this mint. This coriander grew in my garden.
I made this jam." Oh, he didn't win that. Ricky won that.
Oh yeah, Ricky accidentally wins.
Yeah, Alan did fine on that one. Ricky said, "I've never heard of that pie. I've never seen that pie. I've never eaten that pie." Mm-hmm. Which is absolutely a thing that happens on Bake Off. Like every now and then somebody will win and they're like, I've had no clue what I was doing. I just got real lucky. So
I love that. I love that. So then as they break for lunch that day, she's sitting with Anvita and a bunch of the other contestants. And Anvita's like, hey, go over and get Harry because he's a studsicle and we can ogle him from closer up if you go get him. And she's like, I'm really not super comfortable with that, but like, I will go get him to include him, I guess. And Vita's like, whatever your reason is, just go get him.
And Vita's great, y'all. Like, she's lovely. And I really enjoyed her presence until she lost at some point and disappeared. But until then, she's great.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So she goes over and he's like, hey, before you say anything else, like, I just want to make sure I didn't upset you the other day. She's like, upset you? And he's like, well, about the name thing and the love thing and the bird thing and the mate thing. And she's like, oh, no, it's okay. I don't like think you're a dick at all or whatever. And he says, because sometimes I'll say something and then I'll think, Christ, Harry, you utter ballsack. And it'll be buzzing around my head forever. Relatable
Same,
content.
Harry. Same.
Yeah, relatable content. I, every once in a while, still think of a stupid thing I said no less than 12 years ago on a rafting trip.
Yeah.
Nobody else remembers it. Nobody took offense to it at the time. Still, we'll wake up at 3 a.m. thinking about it.
Yep. Absolutely.
And he switches to calling her mate.
He does. And he says, and this is lovely, he says, you said I wouldn't call you love if I was a bloke, and I thought about it, and you had a point. And it was this or start calling all my mates love, and I reckon they'd look at me a bit funny if I tried. And I just loved that, like, you said something, and I thought about it, and you were right, so I changed what I was doing. And I was like, yes, good job, Harry.
Yeah, it's so cute. And this will happen over and over again, and every time she's like, he's not the knuckle-dragging tradesman I thought he was at the beginning. This is really weird. I keep thinking I understand him, but I don't think I really do. So, and he's really anxious about groups. He's really anxious about going and eating with the group. But she brings him over, and it's adorable.
It's very cute. Harry and Anvita, like, have an argument about football, which is a very, like, British thing.
Oh, yeah.
That, like, I'm sure people have seen before, and it's adorable. And then Rosaline's parents come up and they sort of all talk about like how supportive their families are or aren't. Anvita's there for her gran. Harry hasn't told anybody he's there because he doesn't want his work people making fun of him. Yeah. So that's lovely.
Yeah, it's really, really cute.
And then like they have this boring conversation about like rich people landscaping throughout history, which like, listen, I'm a historian by heart. I love, but like, God, I don't care about this conversation at all. Alan gets really pretentious about like landscaping
about the way
trends.
the way that you can see the way the land and the buildings have shifted over the hundreds of years they've existed.
He
And
like
this hermitage exists because rich people were idiotic about something way back when.
Right.
And so she keeps on being like, I don't really want to cut him off because, you know, he's obviously passionate about it. I think at this point she does really think it's charming, right?
I think so. Like,
I normally wouldn't be interested, but
he's talking about the hermitage and she's like, hang on, just because you live by yourself and do stuff on your own doesn't make you a hermit. And he's like, well, but that's what they called them. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. I was highly annoyed. She thought it was relatively charming, I guess. And then she reveals that she has some tattoos of butterflies. Yeah. And he's like, can I see them? And we get this like lovely little flirty conversation about her butterflies. And
yeah, they're all the way up her spine.
Mm-hmm.
Which is sexy. Sorry, everyone.
For sure.
Yeah. That's absolutely a hot tattoo.
Is. Yeah. So anyways, then we move on. Oh, sorry.
The only notable thing that happened right before this is that Ellen came over while she was just having like a random conversation with Harry. And there was this moment when he was like, oh, well, you know, if I'm interrupting something. And she's like, what? Like in her inner monologue, she's like, what? Interrupting something with Harry? No, like I can't believe he would even think that. And then she ditches Harry to like go on this walk with
but like
Alan.
She and Alan Alan and Harry still have this little like pissing contest conversation that I hated.
Harry's just like, hey, you did really well last week, like great job or whatever, and Alan's like, yes, thank you so much.
Yeah,
it's fine.
It's whatever.
Yeah.
So then it's Sunday and they're making pies and they have to make 24 miniature pies, 12 sweet and 12 savory. And she is starting to have a problem with her pies. And Grace Forsyth, and this is also directly something that Mel and Sue from GBBO have said that they do. She messes something up and starts crying, and Grace just shows up, takes a spoon out of her hand, and starts swearing and using name brands, basically making the footage unairable on purpose to like make this. She doesn't want this to have to show up on air, and so Grace just like comes over and swears and then like goes, oh, did I ruin the segment? Sorry, how about you go film someplace else? And so
yeah, it's really cute. Yeah, she's trying to make dulce de leche something or other, and her
something like
dulce isn't de lecheing.
Yeah,
it's really cute. She doesn't win this one either, but she comes in the middle. And
she's solidly the middle baker in this second episode too. And she starts to worry, like, am I good enough to be here? Mm-hmm. And Vita wins the second week, which is lovely. Somebody loses who we don't really care about because we didn't really get to know because he's only been there for 2 weeks. So it's fine.
Yeah, it's fine. Oh, and then when pickup happens, Harry is walking to his car. It's Lauren and Amelie who come get Rosaline. And so he sees Amelie and he like sits down and he's like chatting with her. And he gives Rosaline his card because he's like, hey, if you need anything, like I'm an electrician, I'm really handy. I can fix whatever you need. And, you know, because I know it's hard for you. And Amelie's like, why is it hard for Mummy? And he's like, well, you know, she's a single mom and she can't work and take care of you and fix the boiler and do everything else. And so then Rosaline can't figure out if it's like a come on. And then he like jokes around with Amelie about being a Viking instead of
she goes, are you a baker? You don't look like a baker. And he's like, what do you think I look like? And she goes, I don't know, like footballer, fireman,
soldier,
Viking. Yeah. And he goes, well, I was going to be a Viking, but I went to the job center and they didn't have any openings. So I became an electrician instead.
And she goes, you should have gone back the next day.
And she also says, she goes, I could fix the boiler if we could learn something useful in school, but instead we have to learn spelling. Emily hates spelling, and it's very funny.
It's really cute. And Harry's like, oh no, spelling's really important too. And it's just adorable because he talks to her like she's a person, and it's great. So he accidentally calls Lauren Love, and then he's like, oh, I'm so sorry. I haven't introduced myself. I'm Harry. I'm on the show with Rosaline. And I don't know, Amelie outs that they are exes, and she's like, oh, how is Harry going to take this working class person? I wonder how he's going to react. And he's just like, okay, well, cool. Let me know if you need anything, and I'll see you next week. If not, bye.
Yeah.
And it's great.
It's lovely. And then in the car, Amelie's like, he should have been a Viking because that's very cool. And then she goes, can I be a Viking? And Lauren goes, sure. Nowadays we just call it historical reenactment.
It's so cute.
So
it's adorable.
She goes home. Alan texts her and is like, hey, you should come over. And she's like, that's great, dude. But like, I'm a single mom. I have a kid. Like,
and just, he lives in bumblefuck nowhere,
kind of far away. And she's like, you inviting me to come over is just asking for me to do a chore. Like,
well, she's not quite there yet, right? She's still in the stage of like, oh, a cute boy is asking me to go like hang out with him or whatever. And she's like, I don't think I can swing babysitting. And he's like, maybe next time. And she's like, yeah, maybe next time I can do that. And wow, listener, let me just let you know, I don't think there's one time in this book where he even acknowledges how hard it is. He's making her work to see him.
There is not. Yeah.
Anyway.
And she also rates the kiss a solid B+, 7 out of 10. And Lauren's like, since when are you satisfied with a B+? And she goes, it was just a first kiss. And he goes, it's sex, not Legos. Like, yeah.
Yeah. So and she's like, I'm getting to a certain age. Like, I can't expect everything. If a man has a good job, he might need to be taught some things in bed or whatever. And Lauren's like, you're like not even 30. Like, stop this.
Have you met you? Stop. Like, yeah.
You're great. Okay, then the next week is bread. She has to do a sourdough.
Yeah, which I love baking sourdough, but also sourdough's finicky. And you can do exactly the same things you did last week and it might not come out. And like, that's a shitty thing to make bakers on a competition do.
Interesting.
Also, her electricity goes out at the beginning of the week. Bum, bum, bum.
That's this time?
Yeah.
Nice.
She flipped the circuit breaker and then it happened again the next day. She flipped the circuit breaker and it ruined both of her loaves. Mm-hmm. And then she gets somebody to come look at the boiler and he looks around and goes, you're gonna need a new one. Here's 120 pounds. Call me later. And then it makes the same noise. And she's just like very frustrated with home ownership, which I can relate to.
Yes, absolutely.
And in the meantime, you're like, Harry just gave you his card. Call Harry, which is not the first time, listener, that you will say this during this book.
No. Absolutely not.
Because it takes her way too goddamn long to call Harry about her electricity.
A whole ass other character has to tell her to do it. And like, that character is a child, spoiler alert. That's when I started Muppet texting, I think. I don't know. I was big mad at
you
that
were
point.
Big mad.
Big mad. So they do a sourdough. It's great. But she's like, she's a little bit stressed because she's like with the travel expenses not being, reimbursed yet and having to take off weekends from work. Like, I can't do the boiler and this and that and the other thing that I have to do. And like, she's starting to realize like how backed into a corner financially she is, but she really doesn't want to take money from her parents. So
she also has a conversation with her mom about Amelie, which I don't want to talk about too much, except that like it just continues to go showing that like her mom does not understand why she's a bad parent, but like is a bad parent and a bad grandmother.
Yeah, most
So
definitely.
anyways, they show up to make sourdough. They have starter for everybody. Bakers out there are like, how are they making sourdough on a competition? And I'm here to tell you, it's annoying, but they do it. They have starter for everybody that's ready to go. They have an hour today, then they're going to leave it till tomorrow, and then they're going to finish it, which whatever.
Yeah, but because of that, they're not allowed to have any of their technology because they don't want them looking up like stuff about sourdough and how to make it great.
Right,
and so
exactly. So they confiscate their phones like overnight. And she's like, no, I need to call Amelie. Like,
I have an 8-year-old. What the fuck?
I have to call home. Like, you have to let me call her.
And so Harry comes upon her as she's like, you know, sort of talking about this at first. And he's like, well, do you want me to go with you? And she's like, you know, like in her inner monologue, she's like, my mother questions what, like my parenting. And now this guy is questioning my parenting. And she's like, why in the world would I need you to go with me? And he's like, I don't know. Sometimes it's just, you know, easier with backup, a little bit of support. And she's like, I can do it by myself. And he's like, I know, but you know, nothing wrong with asking for a little bit of help. She's like, oh, well, that would be nice.
Yeah.
And so he goes with her and basically just stands there as she's like, somebody get me my fucking phone or I burn this place down. And I loved it.
She was so good. So first she talks to Colin and she's like, I need my phone. And Colin's like, is your kid sick? And she's like, no, she's 8 and I need to call her. And she's like, well, you signed a contract. And Harry's like, you're not going to, she's 8. She's not going to give any sourdough secrets away. And Colin goes, I don't make the rules. The production company makes the rules. And she goes, does that mean Jennifer makes the rules?
And Colin's like, please don't. No, please don't. And so then she goes over to Jennifer and she's like, I need my phone. I have to call my daughter. I made a promise to her. And that was the other thing Harry said. She's like, a lot of people don't think it's important. And he's like, no, it's really important to keep promises to your kids. Like, it is.
Right.
It might be small, but it's still important.
Right. I loved the way she managed to get Jennifer to give her phone. It was like, if you don't give me my phone, I'm going to cry all night and then I'm going to look like shit tomorrow on camera. And Jennifer's like, fine, you can have your phone, put her on speaker, stay with her. Don't ever let this happen again.
Yeah, it's great. Well, because she just figured out from Jennifer that she's apparently the pretty one. She thought she was going to be the boring one.
No, she's the pretty one.
But she's like, God damn it, I'm the pretty one. But like, okay, you want me to look like shit on camera tomorrow? Give me my phone. And after all this is over, the next section starts with, wow, mate, said Harry, you was a force of nature. I was like, oh, it's so cute. And she's like, look, thanks for coming with me. I'm sorry I was kind of rude earlier. And he's like, I get it. You had to call your kid. It's fine. And it's just great. And so then she finds out he has 3 sisters and that one of them is also a single mom. And she's like, oh, I wonder if he was just giving me his card because he understands what his sister goes through.
Right.
That would be a weird human thing to do. Wow. But she can't quite wrap her head around it. And then as they're ending that conversation, Alan comes over and he's like, oh, I was just wondering if you wanted to go for another walk. And he says, I saw you were busy earlier, and so I didn't want to interrupt you.
Doing that thing where he's like looking back and forth between her and Harry, being like, I saw you were busy. Again, just like people can talk to other people.
So first, people can talk to other people. Great point. Second, I think it's really notable that Harry's first response was, do you want some backup? And Alan's first response was, oh, that looks like a mess. I'm going to stay away from whatever that is. And I'm going to approach her when she's more, you know, sexy.
Done with her messy stuff.
Yeah, when she's done being a mess and she's presentable for me kind of thing.
Yeah. Alan looks at Harry and goes, you don't mind if I kidnap Rosaline, do you? And Harry goes, I reckon with people he goes, you don't mind if I steal Rosaline? And Harry goes, I reckon with people it's called kidnapping. Being like, she's a person.
Yeah.
You could just ask her, which I loved.
I loved it. And then this asshole responds with, I think it's called an idiom. And Harry's just like, well, see you never. I got to go over here. Have a great night. Bye. And she says like, hey, man, that was a little bit much. Like, Harry was just making a joke. And he goes, oh, I'm sorry. That went right over his head. There's no way he understood that because he's a lowly tradesman.
She goes, I don't think that makes it better.
Yeah.
And she's like, you're not being funny. Like, he's a person. He's been nice. And Alan's just like, it's just because he wants to get with you. And she's like, I don't think it is, though.
Right. And this is not the first or the last time that he's going to be like shady about other people.
Right.
But it is the first time that she has seen him do it to someone's face.
Yeah. And she, I think I changed my mind about the walk. Like, I don't think I want to go for a walk with you right now. But then they end up going back to her room.
Yeah. She's like, hey, do you want to, instead of going for the walk, do you want to just come to my room for sex? And he's like, oh, okay. Like, I don't have a condom. And she's like, yeah, I didn't bring any either. And she's like, well, we could probably like do other stuff or whatever. And he's like, oh no, I saw a machine in the bathroom. Hold on. And he like runs as fast as he can. Literally, that's not Melody fanfic. He pegs it across the lawn to like get to this bathroom.
He was sprinting away. Like, yeah. So sex with Alan was fine. It was good. It kept her out of her head. It gave her a brief, welcoming sense of being in control of something, even if it was just her body. And I was like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I've had that kind of sex before.
Yeah.
It's
fine.
It's like fine. Could have been doing anything else though, frankly.
So this is when Melody starts frantically texting me. She goes, Meredith, who is the hero of this book? I want it to be Harry, but she just had sex with Alan. And she was so mean to Harry. And I was like, no, we don't like Alan. It's fine. It's definitely Harry. And she goes, good. I was trying to figure out how to continue speaking with you and Alexis Hall, because Melody and Alexis Hall are on speaking terms, if Alan was the hero.
I didn't know if I had to break up with both of you. That would be terrible.
That would be awful, but don't worry. It's Harry. Listener, Harry is the hero of the story. It is not Alan.
The hero. Yeah. And we don't even see we don't see a penetration scene with Harry at all. It's incredible.
No, it's great.
This book is
she doesn't get with Harry or even like identify him as a romantic prospect until like towards the end of the book, which I kind of loved.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
Like, because the whole time she's dating Alan and being friends with Harry and getting to know Harry.
And he's just lovely. And I love him.
Yeah. And every time she thinks he's going to do what she expects, he does the exact opposite. And it's always very perceptive and understanding. And like, he doesn't say the things with big words, but he says the things.
Right.
And I don't know. It was just really, this book was a marvel as far as like being a reader and what the social contract I make with a romance author when I pick up a fucking romance book.
Yeah.
And I was serious about the breakup, like it was,
I know,
touch and go.
I was really glad that I could be like, no, because I was like, man, Melody will never speak to me again if I picked it back.
No, I would have, but you would have had to do some really hard work uphill.
Yeah. So anyways, they have sex. It's not on the page. Like, it's not closed door. They talk about it after, but like Alexis Hall doesn't do super explicit sex scenes in general.
Unless he does.
Yeah. Correct. But this is one of those, like, it happened and like, whatever, we're fine with it, which to be honest, like, Alan is smug, and I don't really want to read about him having sex because it's probably going to be insufferable. So I'm glad we didn't have to.
I mean, one of them, hold on. I'm going to look for it.
While you're looking it up, I'm going to say this is one of the parts where this is the first time where Alan is suggesting to her that, like, you don't have to be a single mom and work in a shop forever. Like, you could still go back to school. Like, you could still do something with your life, which, like, is A, super offensive, but B, does get her thinking like, oh, maybe I do have options.
Yeah.
Maybe I do have options. Maybe I can go back to school. Maybe that's, whatever. Mm-hmm. What were you looking
at? I was looking for the place in the sex scene where he like, okay, hold on. he like finishes and it says collapsing beside her, he realized that she hadn't yet. And then the next paragraph is sliding his hand from between her legs. He gave her one of those smug, I just orgasmed you grins. And then he says, you're quite something, Rosaline Palmer. And so technically I have nothing to be mad at Alan for. You know, he made sure that she was like taken care of or whatever. And I guess that's adequate for Rosaline.
I guess.
And so I didn't, you know, I was like, okay, maybe it'll get better. Or like, maybe I don't understand what's happening right now. I don't understand.
She was like, this is fine. Like, it's not great, but like, I'm fine, whatever.
Yeah, the good hormones are going through my body now, so like that's nice. And okay, so let's squinch up the middle parts. Yes. Because she spends the whole time baking and dating Alan. And like they, you know, she is mediocre the whole time. Alan wins quite a bit.
She is fine for a while and then at some point like hits her stride and starts doing a really good job. But she does have like a solid couple of weeks where she is just like fine in the middle of the pack and she's like, I'm tired of feeling fine, like I really need to step up my game. It's really hard to step up my game and build the Taj Mahal out of bread when my electric's not working.
Great. And her whole thing is like, you know, the Palmer way is like you have to be the most and the best, and if you're not, you're nothing. There is no adequate in the Palmer home. And so that's sort of running through her head too, because her parents don't respect her for doing this reality TV show in the first place. And so she also like doesn't win the reality TV show. She's like, I like, it's just so embarrassing as far as my parents are concerned. So Alan, like, for Biscuit Week, Alan invites her over to his lovely little cottage in a village that's the Venice of the Cotswolds.
Apparently.
And
which, like, listener, I don't live in Britain. I've never been to the Cotswolds.
I'm sure it's lovely.
I'm sure it's lovely.
But it takes hours to get there.
It's in the middle of nowhere, apparently. And like Alan is very proud of this place that like sounds fine.
Sounds
like
again,
lovely. I'm sure it's lovely, but like cool. You live in a village.
She has to take off work. She has to get a babysitter. She goes like, she's like, I either have to spend multiple hours traveling or go at a really inconvenient time. So she goes early and then doesn't want to like look too, I don't know, desperate or something. And so doesn't call him for a couple of hours. And I'm just like Rosalind
just hangs out in this random village. Like,
and
then like Alan has money and a car. And never once offers to come to her.
Never.
Which I'm just like, sir.
It's always you come to me and like we'll get to it, but never Emily. So then he's like, P.S. I looked into how you would go back to medical school. Not that big a deal. Like, here's your life plan. If you choose to accept it, kind of deal.
It's very simple. And like, you'd be so foolish to like stay doing the shitty job you're doing now and not do this amazing plan sort of an attitude.
And he keeps on being like, well, and your daughter doesn't need you as much anymore. So why should you continue like sacrificing or whatever? You know, we could do this. And she's like, I really enjoy spending time with my kid. Why does nobody understand that? So they go back to his house and they're baking cookies and, you know, they're working on it and he's just like not doing the assignment. Like he just doesn't understand the assignment because it's supposed to be like nostalgia cookies. And he's just like, I'm going to make really posh cookies. And like, you know, they're lavender and stuff. And so she finds a narrative for him to tell the judges to make this okay. And the whole time he's just very obviously being like, I cannot believe that you're condescending. Here's the thing, right?
What the judges want is for them to be like, this is the chocolate chip cookie that my mom made every single weekend. Or this is it's cookies, but like, this is the cake that we would always have for birthday party, right? Like they're looking for something that has like meaning. And Alan goes, yeah, but like chocolate chip cookies are for kids. Like anybody can bake those. I want to bake something fancy. So he just tosses the brief out the window and makes whatever the fuck he wants. And so she's like, well, here, you could be like, oh yeah, my parents, we traveled to Paris a lot. And so these are flavors. Like, here's
these are flavors that remind me of my mom, you know.
Right. Like, even though like it's pretentious biscuits, like pretentious people have childhoods too, I guess. Like,
sure, man.
And he's like sort of disgusted that like he needs that. He's like, but I'm a good baker. Why can't like I just bake good things? Why do I have to have this narrative? And it's like, because that's the fucking point.
It's a TV show, fuckface. Like,
and throughout this whole thing, Alan is competitive. And Rosaline isn't with him. Like, like you get the sense that he will ask her at some point what she's making so he can make a better thing. And she never would do that to him.
Never. No, she's always trying to help.
Gross dynamic. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And in this moment, he like brings her onto his lap and he's like, Rosaline, Palmer, I'm beginning to think that you're not very good at this whole competition thing. And then like makes out with her face or whatever. It's like, ugh. So, okay. So then the other things that happen are her electrics go completely out and she's calling and calling and calling and calling and calling and can't get anybody to come out. And I'm Muppet texting Meredith hard at this point. She
was. She said again, like, when is she going to call Harry to fix the electricity? All in caps. And then Melody says, I'm sorry I'm shouting at you, but frankly, you, Rosaline, and Alexis Hall deserve it right now.
I forgot how you said that. You did. You deserved it. I stand by that. I was so mad.
And
because, yeah, go ahead.
The weekend Melody was reading this was my partner's birthday. So the four of us like were out of town. We were like in a cabin. There was a hot tub. Like I wasn't looking at my phone very often. No. So I was just getting these like delightful ranty Muppet messages like at random times. And it was just the best thing. It was so good.
Ridiculous. So then finally, the child is like, why can't you just call the Viking? Because like she texted Alan and Alan was like, oh, wow. Well, you know, let me know if you need somewhere to crash and you can totally crash at my pad. And she's like, and Amelie? And he's like, oh no, my house isn't childproof. Like she's 8, dude. There's
like,
no
I can't just leave her at home with no electricity.
Yeah. So simultaneously that and like, 8-year-olds don't require childproofing. They're just humans that are smaller. Like, she doesn't chew on wires, Ellen. Anyway, so she's like, okay, well, that's out. And then Amelie, wise child that she is like, please call the Viking. He said he could fix anything. And so she's like, oh my God, yeah, duh. Why didn't I think of that? She calls him and he's like, you all right, mate? And she's like, yeah, but my electrics are out and blah, blah, blah. And he's like, okay, well, I can be there in an hour. Like, I will figure it out. And so,
because, again, like, this is a British, like, oh, sorry, the lighting's so weird.
You're fine.
This is like a nationwide competition. Like, so these are not, like, he doesn't live in her town, which is even better because he, like, has to drive for a little bit to get there. And he's still like, cool, this is how long GPS says it will take me to get there. So I will be there in this amount of time. Like, drop everything and drive an hour to come fix her electric, which is just
for free. Lovely. She's like, I can pay you, and he's like, oh no, we're mates. You don't have to do that. Yeah, this is just friends being friends. All right, that's where I'm gonna leave you this week. Ooh. Next week will be part 2, and we'll get to see the rest of Rosaline's journey through baking and men. If you want more heaving bosoms throughout the week, follow us on social media and join the Patreon. We've got over 150 bonus episodes waiting for you to binge. And most of them are Aaron and I, so if you're feeling nostalgic, there's a brand new backlist waiting for you there. Have a wonderful week. Keep being a badass, and love yourself as much as you love threatening to break up with friends and authors over a fictional character's choices. It gets serious.